First of all, Matt, I want to tell you thank you for coming.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
No, but it's an honor to sit here with you. I met you, a month or two after you gave your graduation speech. I met you and your cousins.
Yeah, you're
One
right.
was at Utah State. The other, I think, was at the U, and
Oh
you
my
were
gosh,
at BYU.
Just good memory.
And I was like, these are the cutest, because I can call you kids now that I'm an old lady. I mean, you guys are all doing great things in the world, and I just walked away from the time that I spent with you really uplifted and thinking about what an amazing family you are and also what an amazing generation you come from, right? I have 6 young kids, and the way that they love other people, I don't think they see color the way that maybe I was raised, or they don't care what people's sexuality are. They care about the earth. Like if I use a paper plate, I'm in trouble, right? Especially if I use something plastic. But I just love what I've seen from you and so many people who are your age that like really your hearts like want to do good for the earth people, right? And it breaks my heart that 2 years later, you know, I just know the respect that I grew up having for the 12. And to get called out, I think I can't imagine. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. It's I'm not gonna lie, it's been a really tough week, and very unexpected.
Yeah. Okay. Let me first ask you, how did you hear about it? Like, where were you? What was going on in your life? I know you're at Berkeley.
Yeah, so I'm living in California now in Berkeley, and this week was actually my first week starting my PhD program. So I was
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, so it's a busy week already. My mind was, I think, as far away from where I'm at now as it could have been, preparing, to start my classes, and I get a message from one of my friends that just says, "I don't know if you've seen what just happened at BYU, but I'm so sorry. I hope this doesn't affect you. You're at a place where you're okay, but if you're not, I'm here for you." And I was kind of like, what? Like this,
Yeah.
I was like, did they say something about all queer people, or is like why are they messaging me specifically? So I Google searched like devotional BYU today, blah blah blah, and after a couple minutes I found this talk, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not sure what's going on, and then I get to the paragraph where Elder Holland mentions me, and my heart just broke. I felt so crushed all of a sudden, where I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm being misrepresented here. I feel like I'm being attacked, and by someone that I really admire and I really love. I mean, Elder Holland, all growing up, was my favorite apostle, like bar none.
Yeah.
And
ditto.
Yeah, and to hear him, call me out like that, just destroyed me. It was really hard, and part of the reason why it was so hard is because I immediately thought about my family, who are active LDS members, and I thought, oh my gosh, is he forcing my family to choose loving me and supporting me or sustaining him? And I hated that. Like immediately, I was so worried that I was going to lose my family again, and yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. Okay, so with that being said, can we go back?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I remember hearing about how, when you were valedictorian of the political science.
Political science, yes.
Congratulations, that's really cool.
Thanks.
How did it, talk about the speech. Like, my understanding was you got permission to say what you said.
That's correct. Yeah, I did.
And you didn't say a lot. If you can talk about that time.
Yeah, so I first found out I was valedictorian maybe a month and a half, 2 months before I graduated, which was such an incredible honor, right? It's something I had really worked super hard for a very long time, and there were a lot of great candidates to choose from. And so I found out there's 7 or 8 valedictorians in the college, one for political science, sociology, history, et cetera, and only one gets to give a speech.
Oh, wow, and you were picked.
And I was picked, yeah. So
wow,
I went
in.
That's
an honor.
Yeah, it was. And so when I was picked, kind of at that moment, I can only describe it as what I believe was inspiration. I kind of got this little thought in my head where I thought, maybe this is a chance where I can speak my truth. I was really worried graduating that I would stay in the closet. I was moving to Salt Lake, was where I was going to start a job. And I thought, my whole life I was like, just make it to my mission and then just make it till I graduate BYU. And I was at this new chapter where I thought, if I don't do it now, will I ever do it? And that was a really scary thought. And so when I realized I would have this platform to speak, I thought, well, yeah, I'm going to speak for people like me, and I'm going to show them that there is a place for us, that we can be valedictorian, that we can not only like be allowed at BYU, but we can be important and needed at BYU. Our contributions are important. And so I kind of had this thought, and they told me that my speech would have to be approved 2 weeks before I gave it. So I thought, okay, let me put this in my speech. I'll send it into the dean's office, and if it's not meant to be, or if it's too controversial or too political, they'll tell me, and that's okay. I'm going to kind of leave it in their court. So I prepared this speech, and I was very intentional to not make it polarizing or set an agenda. I made sure I was like, I want to bear my testimony of Christ. I want to make sure that everyone feels like they're represented in this. I was very, very intentional to the point that when I sent my speech in, I was like, I don't want anyone to like just glance through it and maybe miss the one line where I say I'm
highlighting it.
I highlighted, yeah. I left notes and I said, here's where I'm coming out. Here's why I'm doing it. Link it to Elder Ballard's speech, or I linked to Elder Holland's speech about the gospel choir in every voice. And I sent it in 2 weeks before, and I got a message back like within 24 hours from one of the assistant deans. They said, Matt, we love your speech. Thank you for the annotations. So they saw the notes, and they said, you're good to go. So no corrections, no changes. And in that moment, I was kind of like, oh shoot, now I have to do this. Like now I have the clear, and it's a little more real. So I really feel like, I followed every protocol and every step, and the entire time I felt like I was being very careful and intentional and inspired in the way that I did it. And I feel like that's overall how it was received.
Yeah. Were you out to other people at the time? Did you come out to your family, everyone at that moment?
Pretty much. So I was out to my closest friends at BYU, and I had come out to my parents, but not my siblings or my family. No one from high school really knew. So it really was a big deal for me. It was.
And my memory was, it was a very short statement. It wasn't like you had a long conversation about it in your talk. It was just, what did you say? Correct.
Yeah. I was just sharing, my speech was sort of about things we can celebrate and personal victories that we can have, because everyone was celebrating at graduation. So when I got to that part, I just wanted to share, my struggles with coming to terms with my sexuality and praying to God and working through it during my time at BYU, and receiving that personal revelation that I knew that I was okay just the way I was. I didn't get on that podium to say BYU should, allow gay people to get married in the temple, or we should abolish the honor code. I mean, I had no agenda of trying to push policy one way or the other. I was just trying to speak my truth in a way that I do not feel is incongruent with BYU's mission or with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so part of that is why I was so surprised is how can you say that just saying I'm proud to be a gay son of God is antithetical to the gospel or to BYU? I don't see how that's true.
Right. Well, I know that a recent study said that 13.2% of BYU students, and it was, I think, a sample size of 7,500 students, so a large sample that would actually be quite accurate. That's a lot of students you were speaking to who today I think Elder Holland was speaking to, right? Like, what was it like to be a BYU student knowing that you were gay, that you hadn't come out? Like, what were those years like?
The hardest years of my life. Stephenie, was really tough. Because my entire time at BYU is the first time that I finally started addressing my sexuality or looking at it and saying, this is something that I can't pray away. which I'd hoped my whole life that I could. And so I'm in this space where I'm addressing this cognitive dissonance, but I know that if I take it a step too far, or if I show too many of my cards to the wrong person, that I could lose everything. It was terrible. It was hard, and not knowing who I could trust or where I could turn to, or if someone who says, that they're an ally and that they're a safe space. Those same people who are now this week agreeing with Elder Holland, saying that, I don't have to advocate for you. Love is not advocacy. Just like confirms to me that my fears were valid, that they were real at BYU, and that other people still right now are feeling those same conflicts. It's tough.
I think growing up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's this path for us, right? Age, you get baptized, you get the priesthood at 12 if you're a man. The goal is, for at least most of us parents, I want my child to go to BYU, serve a mission, right? Graduate, get married in the temple. And it's, you realize that at some age, people who are LGBTQ realize that path might not work for me. I may not be able to do everything that my life has been set up for. And that loss of identity and that loss of understanding, like, what is my future going to be? Like, where am I going to end up? And I think, you look at, say, for example, someone like yourself, you go on a mission, you come back and the world's expecting you to get married next. And you've got to decide, like, am I going to just push through this and bite the bullet? Or is that fair to someone I might marry? Or am I going to do this scary thing, which is, against everything I've been taught? Like, I cannot imagine the way that feels. And then you're in that space, where BYU is this loving, amazing place, but the loneliness of that, I just am sorry that I can't imagine.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hard. My age group, I was 17 when the mission age changed. So when 18-year-olds could suddenly go on mission. So I was in high school, and like all my friends, we were the first batch of 18-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
So, a month and a half after I graduated high school, went out on my mission.
Where did you go?
I went to Sydney, Australia.
Cool.
It was a great place.
Yeah, and they just got same-sex marriage, a few years ago, after your mission, though, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I was bright-eyed right out on my mission from high school, and I remember as I was finishing up my mission, I was like, okay, I'm going to BYU. The next step, like you're saying, is get my degree and find a woman and get married. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. And so probably about 2 months before I finished my mission, I went into an interview with my mission president. And he was, I think, the third person I'd ever told that I was gay. The first one was a bishop growing up. The second one was a counselor. And so this is the third person ever. And his name is President Howes. So I said, President Howes, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm so scared. I want to do what's right. And he said, all right, Elder Easton, let me give you a blessing. So he puts his hands on my head, and he blessed that from that moment forward, every homosexual feeling I had would be replaced with a heterosexual one. Wow. He blessed me that I would find a woman who I was sexually attracted to, that I would have children with her, that I would be a bishop one day. I mean, he blessed me with everything that my whole life I wanted. And it pains me now to think this, but that was probably one of the best days of my life. I felt so happy. Like,
whoa, that's pressure's gone.
Exactly, that I've been cured, that I'm free. And so I, 2 months later, I'm at BYU starting my freshman year. I'm ready to go. I was Elders Quorum president, going on 2 or 3 dates with women a week. And I did not feel that blessing come true. As hard as I tried, I just could not feel romantic feelings for women. And I kept feeling sexually attracted to men. And I felt like I had failed the atonement of Jesus Christ. I looked at that as I have this blessing from my leader that Jesus will make me into a straight man. And clearly, if I'm still not a straight man, it's my fault. And it took me to a really dark place where I thought that clearly there must be something innately evil about me if Jesus Christ can't fix me when I've been promised that he can. And so knowing that that's the place where I was at, and that's the place where so many students who are LGBTQ are at, it's a no-brainer to me that when people have a platform where they can say, hang with it, right? Like you can make it through, and there is a life after BYU. There is meaning that you can have, and purpose and success. It's not about agenda pushing. It's about life saving.
Yeah. Since Elder Holland's talk at Encircle, we have had numerous kids and parents here that they're, you know exactly where they are.
That hurts my heart so much. You know, when I came out that way, I knew that people weren't going to like it. I knew that, staunch conservative members were going to have an issue with it. But I thought, if I can make campus and if I can make our community better for even just one person, then it's so worth it. And this week, feeling like my efforts to make it better have been flipped on me and weaponized to make it less inclusive and less supportive.
When your only intent was to make it easier for those who came after you.
Exactly. That it stings so much. It hurts so much. Because I don't want that to happen. I'll take whatever heat I have to any day. I'll take barrages from apostles if it means that one more person at BYU is going to feel safer. And worrying all week that the opposite is happening right now, it breaks my heart.
Yeah. So what would you tell those people who are LGBTQ, who are students at BYU, who want to get a degree, who love the gospel, who are Matt Easton a few years ago?
I want to tell them that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this is going on right now. And I'm sorry that anything that I could have done is making it worse for them. And I want to tell them that there are so many people fighting for them.
But Matt, you didn't do anything to make it worse for anyone. No, you have made it easier for a lot of kids, and I can tell you that. You showed you can be the valedictorian. You can get a PhD. You can love. I'm sorry because you haven't done anything but try to help people. We all know that. I just hope you know that.
Thank you.
Your strength and your courage. I mean, anyway.
Thank you. Well, to the BYU students who are still there on campus, I want them to know that I understand and that so many people understand. And when I was at BYU, one of the hardest parts is I felt alone. I felt like no one else knew what it was like or could relate. And now that I'm on the other side of coming out, that couldn't be further from the truth. There is such a large community here at Encircle and at BYU and in the greater world. So many people who were ready to love me with open arms just as I am. And I want to tell those BYU students that no matter what happens, they're going to find that same community and that we're going to be right here with them. And I get it, that it's hard. There's a lot of reasons why queer students at BYU stay. Maybe it's because they're afraid that if they leave, they'll lose their faith. Or there's, financial boundaries that are really real and really hard. Or just the fact that BYU can be really wonderful. The professors I worked with, the education I got, was awesome. I loved it. I love that BYU has the most beautiful flowers everywhere.
Yes.
I love walking on campus, and I think it can be such a beautiful and wonderful place. And so I get it. I get why LGBTQ students want to be there. And I also think that it's not unfair to ask that we feel safe there, that we can say, I am gay, and not worry about being attacked, or being criticized just for a simple statement of truth like that.
Yeah. I think that sometimes we politicize LGBTQ. We don't remember, or we forget this is about people.
Yeah.
It's our people. It's our kids. It's our Mormon family that we are hurting. like it's gotta stop. And I don't understand what the fear is.
Yeah.
You know, and it seems like sometimes sexuality is so important, and unfairly the LGBTQ community, that's how they're seen, as sexually, not as individuals that are creative, loving, you know, like so much of who LGBTQ people are gets
Absolutely.
forgotten, and it becomes very, they become very, you know, seen for a very small part of who they are. You know, I was reading it was a Salt Lake Tribune article in the last month or two. Jana Reese.
Jana Reese, yes.
23% of young Mormons are now claiming they identify as LGBTQ, according to her research. Had you not heard that?
Wow. I think I remember reading something about that, but hearing it again, I mean, that's almost a fourth, right? That's 1 out of 4.
Unless I read it wrong, right? 16 point something percent of young people just identified as LGBTQ on a Gallup poll. Like I said, 13.2%, 9% of youth nationwide between the ages of 14 and 17 are identifying as non-binary or transgender. This is a lot of our nation. Let's just take American kids. If they grow up feeling shame, less than, not good enough, suicidal, we are going to have a problem, because when you feel that way about yourself, sometimes the only thing you can do is turn to drugs and alcohol, numb that shame. I sat with a boy who was 35 in drug rehab. He says to me, "Stephenie, do you know I'm gay?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you know drugs and alcohol saved my life?" And I was like, "Huh?" And he says, "Yeah, I realized at age 12 I was gay." He said, "Through my high school years, I would have taken my life, but drugs and alcohol numbed that pain." And I said, "Well, how did your parents do when you came out?" "Not very well." He said, "You know, but I had 6 years to be okay with myself and to process it. So I had to give that same time to my parents, right? I couldn't expect them to immediately be okay." And I just, you know, you look at that and like his kindness and compassion. Sadly, he didn't make it, you know, a few years later. But to me, it feels like this needless suffering, that what are we going to do? How do we move forward? Because since the beginning of time, a percentage of God's population and people, humanity, have been born LGBTQ. And it's going to go on forever and ever. It's part of the plan. It's part of our humanity. Why don't we celebrate it? Why do we have this fear and this, you know, like, what do you think? Like, why?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the nail right on the head. You know, it comes down to fear. And I think, what is there to fear? You know?
I don't see that same-sex marriage has hurt my marriage, right?
Yeah.
Or will it my kids? And it's not contagious. It's not, you know, I've never thought about loving another woman. Like, you know, like, when did I decide that I loved men? It was part of me. And you can't change it. Anyway, I cut you off, but I mean,
absolutely.
How do we move forward in a positive way?
I really think it comes from not trying to silence our voices, but by giving us a space and uplifting them. You know, since Elder Holland's remarks this week, I've had half a dozen people reach out to me who were valedictorians at BYU, who were LGBTQ. Some of them who were before me.
Doesn't surprise me.
Some of them who've been valedictorians since I've graduated. And you know what? There's going to be LGBTQ valedictorians again. Because first of all, we're pretty awesome. We're smart. We work hard.
You get the heart. You get the
Yes.
passion.
Yes. And so when, you know, Elder Holland says this has to stop. You know, we can't let queer people have a stadium. My response is, I'm sorry, but it's not going to stop. You know, we're going to keep succeeding. And if you won't give us a platform, we'll help each other and we'll support each other. And so I think instead of fearing that valedictorians are going to keep sharing their sexuality or sharing other parts of themselves, we should fear that they don't. Because when they don't, that's what's isolating. That's what makes kids feel alone and feel like there's no one else like them, and makes them feel like there's no place for them. But when we share these voices, it's not divisive. It is inclusive. It is encouraging and empowering. I felt empowered just by knowing that I wasn't the only one, and that I won't be the last one, you know? So I think instead of looking at it through a lens of fear, we should look at it through a lens of hope, because there's a lot of hope to be had. I think it's great.
Yeah. You know, I went to BYU for 7 years.
Okay, yeah. 7 years?
7 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
did undergrad and then I did law school. And I remember, like, I felt like there was this ideal way to be.
Yeah.
And that I had to be that, right? And it's interesting that, you know, I think on campus at the time, we all looked alike. We kind of dressed, you know, like, I don't know, you know, I just wish that we would celebrate our differences. And one of the best things my dad taught me growing up was, well, I would pass him in the hall, and he'd say, have you brushed your teeth? Have you taken your fluoride pill? And are you nice to everyone? Like, it was just this thing, the three things over and over. Teeth were really important to him. But
your teeth look great, by the way. You followed his advice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, though, but he would say, are you nice to those, especially who are different than you? Because that's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to grow. And that we don't honor that, and that we kind of feel like this mold, I think we really are hurting ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I was at BYU when the Proclamation to the Family came out.
Wow. Okay.
And when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is so awesome and amazing. And I believed it was a proclamation from God. I believed everything that was in it. About 3 years later, I'm in law school. My professor Wilkins says, hey, I was on the committee that helped create the Proclamation to the Family. I took it, I did to them.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then, you know, learning that the Proclamation to the Family was created as a legal document back in 1997 when Hawaii was going to have same-sex marriage potentially. And if we as a religion wanted to be able to have religious freedom to basically, it feels like today, discriminate against people who are LGBTQ. We had to have it like codified as a religious part of our religion, right? Because you can't discriminate if it's not part of your religion. Mm-hmm. And I talk to parents every day here at Encircle who want to love their child, but they believe in the Proclamation to the Family. And I always feel like, well, it's not my place to like hurt who they are religiously. But when moments like this happen, and I know that there are kids who are suicidal, I know that there are kids who have self-hate, you know, you do kind of want to clarify, is that from God? Or is this something that we have decided that we want to be in modern day Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a tenant, so that we don't have to change? I mean, I don't know if I really want to have you respond to that, but I do. It's a hard part of when you see the pain and families coming apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, a kid comes out, and you'll know more about this than I do, but a kid comes out, sometimes mom feels one way, dad feels the other. There's stress on the marriage, there's stress on the family. These kids are at the center of that, and they know it. They feel like because they are part of the family, there's no longer eternal life. My parents' marriage isn't doing well. And these are kids, little kids. So it's hard when you feel like we're protecting sometimes an institution over people when Christ came and said, love one another. Like, that's the number one responsibility I think we have in life.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think, you know, it just, my heart aches because we as LGBTQ people, I guess from my experience, yet from an early age as well, put so much pressure on myself, and so much self-hatred and loathing because I thought, you know, I would be the one that would break my family up eternally simply for who I am, you know, something that I can't control, but now I feel like I'm internally in debt for, and I always constantly have to make up. Is this not healthy? It's not, and it's not true.
And I'm so sorry that you've had to go through that. You know, I like, as a mom, you know, sometimes you're home for hours and hours by yourself in the day, and maybe my mom did something or said something to me and ticks me off, and that story that replays in my mind over and over, and I think of that often, like that's what some of the kids are left with, is that story and that self-hate, and then, you know, we have mental health issues.
Right.
I just think it's important to clarify that people do not have mental health issues because they're LGBTQ. There's
Absolutely
nothing
not.
wrong.
Yes.
But the stories that they are told over and over about that they're wrong or broken just destroys people. I'm just grateful for people who have courage to say, I'm going to do what I can to help other people, and I will sacrifice who I am and potentially be called out or, you know, suffer the consequences. So thank you for that. And
Absolutely. I think one thing I've been struggling with this week as well is sort of the timing of all of this, if I'm honest. I mean, I came out 2 years ago in this speech. You know,
that was a while ago.
I've come a long way since. You know, it's been a long time since I've really thought about my coming out. You know, I'm living in a new city, and I'm in a new program, and I have a different group of friends, and so it really caught me off guard that 2 years later I would kind of, you know, be brought up again, and this time chastised for coming out the way that I did. And it left me wondering, like, if this really was such an issue, why wasn't there an immediate response? You know, why didn't you clarify immediately where you stood? And, you know, I don't know their intentions, but from my perspective, it was hard not to feel like I was being tokenized. It was hard not to feel like, you know, when I came out 2 years ago, that there was some good conversations about BYU, that BYU is becoming more accepting, or you know, they allowed this student to talk about his sexuality, which encouraged a lot of people, probably maybe encouraged some LGBTQ high schoolers, maybe to feel like they could go to BYU. And then to wait 2 years to then say, actually, that's not okay. It feels like maybe they got as much good out of it as they could before they actually said what they wanted. And I don't know if that's the truth, but that's what it feels like. And it's hard when other things like the honor code change in 2020, where they took, you know, homosexuality, you can't be homosexual, out of the honor code, and waited, 3.5 weeks before they said, actually, you still, you know, you can't date or things. It's like a continued pattern, which is hard for me, and I imagine hard for my community not to feel whiplashed.
Oh, 100%. 2 steps forward, 5 steps
Yes.
back, 1 step forward, 3 steps back. Why? What do you think? Why? Like, you know, is it that there's disagreement in leadership? Is it the fear? I mean, what?
The
do you have any
optimist,
thoughts?
the optimist inside of me hopes that it's because there's maybe some internal dialogue going on. There's maybe some people saying we shouldn't land in one certain way. You know, also part of me fears that maybe there's. What am I trying to say? I hope that there's internal dialogue because they genuinely care about people like me. I fear that maybe there isn't that as much concern for the individual as so much concern over their institution. I mean, just thinking back to Elder Holland's remarks, you know, he talked about a letter he got from someone who was hurting because they feel like there's too much support for LGBTQ people and it was confusing, and they were willing not to send their children to BYU or give donations. You know, and I hear that, and I recognize that can be a concern. You know, someone wouldn't want people to be deterred from their university. But, you know, the letters that I get and that you get and other people get aren't about the people fearing, you know, not to donate anymore. It's about people wanting to take their own lives. And I feel like there is such a stark difference between the two.
Right.
That how I guess I don't feel like I could equate the two, or I couldn't justify wanting to get some more money at the cost of losing lives of people that I purport to love.
Yeah, and I think that Elder Holland really made it clear where the money was coming from. You know, President Nelson approves it. It felt to me like we're going to get these professors in line.
Yeah.
And I feel for those professors. They're tenured. You know, they have, you know, what do you do if you leave?
Seriously, yeah. The academic job market is crazy, too. It's not like they could just pick up and move to a new school tomorrow.
No, you lose your pension.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's tough. And I don't know, my time at BYU, I feel like I had the best professors with the best hearts. And
Yeah.
I think you had that experience.
Totally.
And you need those professors to be able to have real conversations with them. If they're in fear, they're not, and they can't teach or they can't be that professor you want them to be.
Then it's bad for both of them. Yeah, it's bad for students and for professors, I think. You know, I know that Elder Holland mentioned concern over certain symbols, which to me sort of insinuated maybe pride flags or safe space signs. I mean, he didn't say that directly, but it's personally, I think it's hard maybe not to see the correlation between the two. And I remember during my time at BYU, in my entire department, there was one professor who had a rainbow flag in his office. And he is the first professor I ever talked to about my struggles with my sexuality. And I can say with total confidence that symbol, that flag in his office, you know, saved my life, saved me from a really dark place. It made me feel like, if nothing else, there was one person here in my department who's at least trying to have my back.
Yeah.
And you know, there's power and love in these symbols and these flags and these stickers. And since then, you know, I think that there's more and more on campus. And as a student, it was encouraging and empowering. And to think that maybe people are going to be afraid to show those simple signs is disheartening. And I hope that they continue to show them, because I don't think those signs are divisive or antithetical to the church or to BYU's mission. So I hope those professors keep showing them, because they really do help.
If I were a BYU professor, I don't know that I would dare.
Wow. Yeah.
And I hate to, if we're speaking about that symbol, when the pride flag becomes political or people interpret it that way, because I think that pride flag is lives. It's people. You know what I mean? It represents, these are people that we need to acknowledge and love. It's, you know, political, what does that mean? Right? Are lives political? I don't think so.
Absolutely not. And it's like, you know, my identity as a gay man is something I can never change, and I never.
But you don't want to.
I don't want to. It's an intrinsic part of who I am. So to say that it's political, I mean, there's no amount of policy that could ever change that will ever change the way that I am. And so it's, you know, it's about human identity. It's about humanity.
Yeah. You know, I have to say, when I heard about the November policy, 2016,
Right.
the first thing I thought is, and I don't know, I'm just throwing this out, but why would they do that? Like, what, you know, if there's anyone who needs the Holy Ghost, it might be a child who's growing up already feeling a little bit different because maybe one of their parents is LGBTQ, right? And to say that for some, you know, like, anyway, it didn't make sense to me, but personally, I was feeling like, if we don't get to know our LGBTQ brothers and sisters, we can other them.
Yeah.
But if they're sitting in the pews next to us, we find out they're the most amazing individuals, and they're like the rest of us, and we want them to be our family, and we want them to be a part of our ward. And it's almost easier to other people when they're not even there. And I felt like we're afraid. We're afraid of getting to know each other. And that's what Encircle's about. You know, I want parents to come in and the community to come in and get to know these kids. Because the minute you get to know them, you hear their stories, you fall in love with them. And I think that's when love happens, is when we get close to each other, not when we label each other and distance each other.
That makes me think. I have an aunt and uncle who I'm very, very close to. I have, two cousins who are like 1 year older and a year younger. So I grew up with them, spent summers at their home, and I hope my uncle's okay with me sharing this story. But from a young age, I knew that my uncle, for lack of better, he was pretty homophobic. He had some strong feelings about gay people. He would say they just kind of make him feel icky. He would say this, and I kind of pick up on this, and I'm like, oh, this, my uncle. I love him and he loves me, but also I know that if I ever come out to him, he might not take it well, and it's interesting is I expressed these feelings to my aunt because I'm so close to my aunt. She's one of the first people I came out to, and I said, Aunt Amy, Aunt Amy, I'm so scared if my uncle finds out, is he gonna stop loving me? And she said, I've always told him that you feel this way until someone that you love is gay and it's going to change. And I was like, okay, that's a nice idea, but I don't know if that's the truth. But this week I got a call from my uncle, and he said he wanted me to know how much he loved me, and that there was someone at his work actually who was kind of talking down about me specifically, and he stood up for me. And he said, you cannot talk about my family that way. And he was like, send me your talk, send me Elder Holland's talk, give me all the information. And I was so moved because it felt so genuine. And I knew that my aunt was right. That as soon as someone that we love, that we learn is LGBTQ, it changes our perspective. And so if someone's listening to this right now and they still feel animosity or fear towards the LGBTQ community, I just say, just wait. Wait until someone you love, because, statistically speaking, someone you love is LGBTQ, and your perspective's going to change. And that key there is love,
yeah,
I think.
I think so too. Quick, my story just for a minute. After growing up in Orem and then going to BYU, I was a family science major. I was all about the family, yes. Right? With that came the traditional family, right? So after I leave law school, I went to Capitol Hill and worked on the Committee for Children, Youth, and Families to defend the traditional family, right? I would have told you at the time that if we ever had same-sex marriage, it would destroy the moral fibers of our country.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow.
I meet John Williams, who, is kind of the inspiration behind Encircle. So he was my husband's uncle. He was about 50 years old at the time, and he was gay. He grew up Mormon. He said when he was in high school, he would have done anything not to be gay. He went on a Mormon mission, hoping he could pray the gay away. Came home from his mission, and he was like, I was still gay, and he went to Utah State, where sadly he became suicidal because of the self-hate that he had about his sexuality, and he knew it wasn't going to go away. Thankfully, his sister, who's living in Salt Lake City, recognized that John was not doing well, and he said she came and picked him up and saved his life and brought him to Salt Lake City. John went on, to do really great things for the city. And as a gay man, in Utah, and, he brought 13 restaurants to the city. He was a renovationist. He won national awards. He was a big part. He started the Downtown Alliance. He was really involved in the community. And he did it all as a gay man, over the past 50 years. So I'm living in Provo, 2016, about when the policy comes out. And I call John, and I'm like, John, you've been thriving. Yet kids today in my community are taking their lives. Like, it feels like we're moving backwards, right? We're not it should be getting easier, not more difficult. And, I just feel like people are constantly bombarded with negative messaging sometimes that is hard to believe that is God. But I tell that story because one person changed the whole trajectory of my life and my beliefs, right? Just knowing this gay man and going, this is the most Christ-like person I've ever met. He's the center of his family. He's doing good in the world. Like, how am I to judge him for his sexuality when if I were half the person he was, I would know I was, going back to the heaven, right?
Right.
But I think, I'm just grateful for people like you, Matt, who live the lives you live. You set an example for all of us, and people younger than you, that's what's changing the world. And so I hope, you'll live loud and proud. And for me too, as a mother, my husband has 3 uncles who are gay.
Wow.
Yeah, well, 2 cousins and 1 uncle.
Gotcha.
So I married my husband, and I remember holding my son for one of the first times ever, going, what if he's gay? Because I thought a lot about, maybe, we know there's genetic components, we know that biology plays a factor in our sexuality and gender identity. And, as a young mom, I was like, well, he will be my most protected, because sadly I knew I would have to defend or protect him more, because the world he would be walking through would be more difficult. I just like to believe that we're better than that as humans, and that we're going to move to a more science-driven, listen to what we know, love better, and I think that's what religion's all about.
I totally agree, yeah. And I think that's happening at a grassroots level maybe. These professors, if you ask yourself, why are they showing support for LGBTQ students? It's because just as they're meeting them, they're meeting us, and they're seeing that we're just normal kids, that we have passions and dreams and
hardworking,
yes,
smart, everything.
Yes, and so that brings me hope that just as my uncle was able to change and you were able to change, that it's not an impossible task, and it comes from having conversations and connecting and being willing to listen to stories like mine and other LGBTQ people, that the change is going to come.
And not being afraid, like you said, what if there are more valedictorians? Wouldn't that be cool?
It'd be great.
And it's interesting that I could get up in a speech and refer to my husband, and that's declaring my sexuality.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter.
I know, right? It's the same principle. It's no different. Yeah, it's funny. I also think there is something to be said, in the remarks from earlier this week, when Elder Holland mentioned me specifically, and he said, if we let people talk about their sexuality, what's next? Kind of insinuating someone's going to get up and, I don't know, say they're a pedophile or bash the church. And I'm like, but in order to buy into that logic, you have to accept that simply stating your sexuality is a bad thing to begin with. And I don't think that it is. In fact, I know that it's not. And so I think that there does need to be conversations about reframing our understanding of how sexuality plays a part in our identities, in our plan with Heavenly Father, if you believe in that, and so I hope that those opinions can change. But also, I'm not holding my breath. I'm not going to wait for permission from someone else to tell me that it's suddenly okay. I know that it is. I know my relationship with God, that God has told me that it's okay, and I'm ready to live my life in a way that's fulfilling and loving to me.
And without fear.
Absolutely, without fear.
Because I think that there's fear-inducing in some of the words that we heard spoken, like
what's around the corner?
Yeah,
what's the big boogeyman?
Yeah, and you're like, really not.
Well, yeah, what's around the corner? Less suicides, greater safety, which would lead to greater research from students. I mean, there's only net positives that come from allowing students to feel like they can be themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, thank you. I want to ask you one last thing. How's your family doing? Are they? I mean, that's be hard on mom and dad, and
they've been awesome, so great, which I'm happy, because as I said, my concern is this going to tear my family away from me, but I've experienced nothing but love and support, and that's so awesome.
Yeah,
it's been great. So yeah, I'm happy that I got to fly home for the weekend to be with my mom and my dad. When I got from the airport, my niece came to pick me up, and she wouldn't let go of me the whole time.
This is probably the cute one I met, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was. So it's good. And you know what? As long as my family's by my side, the rest of the world could be against me, but I'm going to be okay. Yeah. And to those people who don't have their family supporting them, I'll be their family. You'll be their family. There's family around for them, and so I just hope that that instead of feeling isolated after this week and after these events, that people can, just look on Instagram at the comments, look at Encircle, come to Encircle, come to these different places and know that we're here for each other, and our community is only going to get stronger, and we're only going to get louder. We're never going to stop. And I think that that's what God would want.
100%. Matt, just thank you. I love you. I love what you're doing. I love that you're getting your PhD. Think of all the good things you're going to do in the world, for all of us.
I love you.
I love you.
Thank you.